FAQ Psychoanalysis, Lecture 14. We are moving towards the end of this book. This is the last chapter, and after this, there is just a list of resources. So this last chapter deals with some common psychopathological issues and their psychoanalytic explanation. Obviously, we have studied different schools, and therefore each school will give a different explanation of the same pathology. And in this chapter, we'll come to appreciate how the same problem is explained differently and therefore treated differently by different schools of psychoanalysis. And the craft therefore lies in knowing as many schools as possible to whatever depth we can, and then to exercise this judgment which comes only from experience and very deep conceptual understanding, when to use which school how much. So let us look at a few common psychopathological problems and see how different schools give different explanations of the same problem. And that introduces us to the pluralism in psychoanalysis, pluralism in psychotherapy, and brings to our side the fact that we are awaiting the hour of integration. First problem, paranoia. Let us look at two explanations of paranoia, a Freudian explanation and a Kleinian explanation. The Freudian explanation on causation of paranoia is based on repressed homosexuality. Freud says that if there is a repressed homosexuality, then this sequence of unconscious movements happen in the mind. The first event is because of the homosexuality, the person develops a homoerotic liking towards a person of the same gender, and the thought arises along with feelings, I love you. This, however, is not acceptable to the morality of the person, and therefore the defense of reaction formation is used to convert I love you into I hate you. This intensifies over time, and I hate you turns to I will kill you, which again is not acceptable to morality. And so projection happens, not reaction formation, projection happens. The defense of projection is used, and I will kill you turns to you will kill me. And this then leads to the anxiety that we call paranoia. The delusion of persecution. So I love you, I hate you, I will kill you, you will kill me. And you see the defense of reaction formation and the defense of projection at work in the sequence. This is the Freudian explanation of paranoia. And the cure, therefore, is to accept one's homosexuality and integrate it into the conscious mind. So we see the causation and the cure in the Freudian school of paranoia. Now let us go to the Kleinian school and see how they explain the causation and the cure of paranoia. The Kleinian explanation is that the split is open and therefore the fear of the bad breast, the fear of the attack of the bad breast persists, and it is this fear of the attack of the bad breast because of the split being open creates this fear of torturous and murderous attack coming from outside, and this is the cause of paranoia. So Klein says that paranoia essentially is a phenomenon of the failure to close the split and move to the depressive position. And because the split is open, there is fear of the attack of the bad breast, and this fear is what is experienced as paranoia. The cure, therefore, is to close the split and to move from paranoid schizoid position to a depressive position. So we see how, in terms of causation and cure always is a function of causation. In terms of causation and cure, how the same psychopathological problem is differently engaged with by the Freudian school and the Kleinian school. Obviously, if you take 100 people with paranoia, some will be because of what Freud says, and some will be suffering because of what Klein says. When to use which school is the question of experience and craft. Second, very common problem, depression. Freud understands depression as anger turned inwards. Anger towards a person which cannot be expressed for whatever reason of reality or morality. Anger is towards somebody, but it cannot be expressed, so it is blocked. And this then turns inward, causing depression. So for Freud, anger turned inwards is one of the prime reasons for depression. The Freudian explanation technically is worded like this. Depression results from an anger turned inwards, which results from loss of ambivalently cathected narcissistic object. What does it mean? Freud says that if you are attached to somebody and that person leaves you or the person dies, usually after mourning, you will shift this attachment and all the feelings you have towards some other person. A substitute will be found. However, if the relationship is of a narcissistic nature, then you see that person as an extension of yourself and you cannot accept the fact that you are no more. In accepting the fact that the person is no more, the difficulty of accepting the loss is so high that the only way the mind can deal with the loss is to deny the loss by making that person a part of oneself and making the person perpetual by identifying with the person. Now you both of you are one, and there is no question of separation. So the problem of loss and separation is dealt with by a psychological operation of taking in that person and making and identifying with it to make it a part of oneself. So this object with whom I had a narcissistic relationship, the cathexis was of the narcissistic nature. It was a narcissistically cathected object. And with this object, I have intense love, intense hate relationship, ambivalent relationship. Love and anger towards the same person. Love and hate towards the same person, which is ambivalence. So when there is a loss of an ambivalently cathected narcissistic object, a substitute cannot be found. A normal mourning process is not enough. In such cases, the person is psychologically taken in and made a part of oneself. In that process, what happens is the feelings towards the person now are turned inwards because the person also is inside. And it involves both the feelings of love and the feelings of anger. And it is this feeling of anger towards that person who is no more, who has been internalized now. The feelings associated with him also are turning inwards onto oneself. So there is anger which always used to be towards that person, and there is now an anger for abandonment, for leaving one, for leaving oneself, for betraying one in that separation. There is as though an unsaid pact of being together forever. And that unsaid pact is now broken. It's a betrayal. And therefore, there is a secondary rage of betrayal. And both these are turned inwards because the person is no more in the real world. So they are both turned inwards, leading to depression. In Kleinian, okay, so what is the cure then? The cure is to undergo mourning and feel that anger fully and let it go. Feeling towards the person, of course, it can be done only in imagination, but that is enough. Feel that anger towards the person where it belongs, feel it fully, let it go. And undergo the deep mourning of pain, catharsis of pain. In Kleinian terms, depression happens because of the loss of the all good breast. Bion used to say, where there was a nipple, now there is a hole. This hole leads to depression. One can say Bion was a qualified Kleinian, and Puritian Kleinians would just settle for loss of the all good object leading to depression. So the whole point of depression is more sadness here than anger. And the cure would be to feel fully that sadness and let it go. Third, phobia. Phobia is displacement of fear. What happens in phobia is an innocent object becomes a dreaded object because fear from somewhere else is projected onto that innocent object. And after the projection, that innocent object now looks terrifying. So it is the fear or anger which is going to attack us. Something is put onto that object. Now, from where it is coming, that is a different story altogether. But essentially, phobia results from displacement of something that causes fear or fear itself onto an innocent object, which then becomes the phobic object. In Freudian terms, this anxiety, this fear, which is displaced, comes from the castration anxiety of the unresolved Oedipus. Because the Oedipus is not resolved, the castration anxiety is active and that is displaced onto the phobic object, and therefore the phobic object appears threatening. In Kleinian terms, phobia would be, it is the displacement of the bad object onto the innocent object. It is the displacement of the bad breast onto the innocent object which now looks threatening. In Cohutian terms, it is the disintegration of the self because of some association related to the phobic object which sets on the onset of phobia. Fourth, suicide. In Freudian terms, it is anger turned inwards. So the real desire is to kill somebody because it is not possible owing to reality or morality. That death instinct, that death wish towards somebody is now turned inwards, and therefore one wants to kill oneself. It is actually an act of revenge of killing someone else in a psychological sense. One Kleinian explanation would be to see it as displacement of bad breast on somebody for whom, towards whom there is a desire to kill. And when that cannot happen and the the anger turns inward, that can be one way of explaining the death wish. Second way would be, it is an escape from the worse than death torture anticipated at the hands of the bad breast. Five, mania. Freudian standpoint, mania is the exhilaration of experiencing. The mania happens because of experiencing the Oedipal victory. It is the Oedipal victory where the ego is suspended, the superego is suspended, and the ego flows out in a frenzy of celebration because of the Oedipus victory. In Kleinian terms, it would be attainment, possession, or gaining of the all good breast, which has all the richness in the world, which creates this celebration of effervescence leading to mania. Essentially, in both these cases, it is in a generic sense a situation of dream and reality becoming one. In Freudian terms, the dream is of Oedipal victory. In Kleinian terms, the dream is of gaining the omnipotent all good object. Six, stammering. Stammering from the Freudian point of view is seen as castration because of castration anxiety, that there is fear of the authority figure that he will castrate, and that fear leads to stammering. Attachment theorists would look at stammering as the fear that if one does not speak well, one will be abandoned by the people he is attached to. And this fear of abandonment can lead to anxiety, can lead to stammering. Cohutians would say a repeated attack on the self very early in life without positive mirroring would lead to disintegration of the self in situations of presence of authority figures, and that can lead to anxiety leading to stammering. Success avoidance, self-defeating behavior. Freudian explanation is that people who avoid success, who don't have a killing instinct, who go near to the last stage of success and then stop, that is because of their inability to resolve the Oedipus complex. Because for them, success equals to Oedipal victory, and that leads to the fear of castration and guilt of having killed the father. ISTDP tells us that self-destructive behavior like success avoidance is because of guilt, which punishes us, and the guilt is because of murderous and torturous rage, which is present towards our parents in our unconscious mind. So two different explanations of self-defeating, self-destructive behavior. 8. Dance of intimacy. Some people find it difficult to be close to people for a long time, and also find it difficult to be away from people. When they are away, they feel lonely. When they are close, they feel highly uncomfortable. And therefore, there is a safe zone, which is the mid zone, neither too close nor too away. They have to operate in the zone of optimum distance. Too near, they fear fusion. Too away, they feel abandonment and loneliness. And either way, there is a fear of annihilation. Annihilation of abandonment and annihilation of fusion. So psychoanalysis explains this in terms of annihilation dynamics. Annihilation by abandonment, annihilation by fusion. And therefore the dance of intimacy happens. Too close and he creates a distance. Too much distant and he creates closeness. 9. Greed. Freudian explanation for greed is fixation in the anal phase, where one is collecting something, especially money or wealth, as a substitute for collecting feces, which the child feels in the anal phase is an act of his creativity, something very valuable he does not want to part with, and he wishes to collect it and hoard it. All collections and hoardings essentially are adult renditions of this infantile desire. This is the Freudian explanation of greed. Kleinian explanation is this is a desire to rob the good breast of all its riches and put it into oneself. So there is an element of narcissism in that greed. And of course, the core is possessiveness. And the third element can be to fill up one's emptiness by this robbery. So there is possessiveness, emptiness, and narcissism all at work in a more elemental way below the greed. 10. Compulsive washing of the hands. The psychoanalytic explanation is it is washing off of one's guilt, usually the guilt of Oedipal murder, the Oedipal crime, and the death wish for the father. 11. Ceaseless prayers. Some people ceaselessly pray all day or go to the picture of somebody they worship all day or do something religious all day. Often it can just be an obsession. Often it can be because of obsession can be because of unresolved Oedipus, or it can be catastrophic thinking that something horrible will happen and I require protection of an omnipotent good figure. Kleinian explanation will be, it is fear of attack of the bad breast which is just about to come, or Freudian explanation will be castration is about to happen. A more neutral explanation will be a catastrophic thinking is at work. 12. Catastrophic thinking. Catastrophic thinking can be rooted in castration anxiety, Freudian explanation. Catastrophic thinking can be rooted in fear of the attack of the bad breast, Kleinian explanation. It can be rooted in fear of abandonment, attachment theory explanation. It can be rooted in fragile self, non-cohesive self disintegrating, cohesion explanation. Preparation for genocide. Religious or political leaders often prepare ground for genocide. And in psychoanalytic terms, what they have to do is to make people project their unacceptable parts, the shadow in the Jungian terms, onto the opposite group, or project the bad breast onto the opposite group, which then appear all evil, and then killing is justified without any guilt. 14. Parents who delay marriage of their children and accelerate divorce. Parents who otherwise have no financial or social constraints can still delay marriage of the children, and after having the children married, unconsciously or consciously may work for divorce so that the child comes back to live with them. This may be because of the fear of abandonment, fear of loss, and unresolved early life object loss, because of which they cannot separate from their children. It may also be because they are not attached to adequate number of people in real life. It's very important to build attachment portfolio. One must be attached closely to 5 to 7 people. That is a adequate attachment portfolio. Just as you make a stock market portfolio and invest in different scripts, we have to invest in different people, in relationships of different type, and create a safe attachment portfolio, so that even if one attachment breaks, there are other balancing attachments and we don't fall into a crisis. In parents of this type, usually they don't have adequate attachment portfolio with adequate de-risking and diversification. 15. Can't work with a target. This is often a problem in many professionals who otherwise can produce excellent results when not under pressure, but under pressure they crack. The psychoanalytic explanation is the giving of the target creates castration anxiety, catastrophic thinking, excites inferiority, I am not good enough, and then the anxiety mounts and it cripples the person. So it's a paradoxical situation that you give targets and the targets are not met. If you don't give targets, the targets are met. With this, we complete this chapter, and with this, we complete the book. In the next small episode, I will just go through the resources for further study. But practically, we complete all the chapters with this chapter, and we end our discussion today with a statement by William Menninger. Mental health problems don't affect 3 out of 4. Mental health problems don't affect 3 or 4 out of every 5 person, persons but affects 1 out of 1. Meaning every person has a mental health issue. There is nobody with a perfect emotional health, just as there is nobody with a perfect biological health. So I'll read it again. Mental health problems do not affect 3 or 4 out of 5, but affect 1 out of 1. William Benning. Thank you.